title card. Hello there, lovely people, it's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and yes, I'm here to discuss to you and try to convince you that the Nintendo Switch's power, that's its raw processing power, graphical capabilities, all that good stuff, they don't really matter. This is all being done off the cuff, it's unscripted and all that sort of thing, so it might be a little bit all there and everywhere and all over the place a bit, but bear with me, because I think I can convince you, and if I can't, then I'm sure I can live with the pain. So yes, a lot of people are worried about the Switch being an underpowered machine. Not being as powerful as the Xbox One or the PS4 or Project Scorpio or the PS4 Pro, all that stuff, and people are worried because they think third parties won't support them because they're weak, and then there will be no games and the Switch will be a disaster just like the Wii U. Well, I don't think you need to worry too much. When it comes down to it with the console, the general user doesn't really care just how powerful it is. I mean, you will obviously get some people out there who do care, and that is fine. People are allowed to believe what they want to believe. But on the whole, people really don't care. For example, look at the Dreamcast. It came out during the lifespan of the N64, and nobody really cared about it. It wasn't very good. It didn't, well, I mean, it was a great console, but it didn't do very well commercially. It was a commercial failure, but a critical success. I think that would be fair to say that, because it's a good console. I recently got one. I've been playing it to death. I love it. But whether or not people actually care about the spec is neither here nor there, because the big thing that I know a lot of people have been worried about is the third-party support. If it's not as powerful as the PS4 or the Xbox One, then people aren't, game developers aren't going to bother porting the third-party games over to the Switch because it's too much work. And I think that's not really going to be a problem. I mean, if the system is there and the people own the system and there's a big install base, companies are going to take the effort to port over to it because it's a huge chunk of the audience that they're missing out on otherwise. I mean, you look at the Wii. I mean, the Wii had, and I think a lot of people forget this, the Wii had Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and it had Call of Duty Black Ops. And it was, I don't think I ever played the games on the Wii, but I think he used the Wii remote and everything like that, and it was a significantly weaker system than the 360 and the PS3, and yet they still took the time to port that over. I think maybe they got a third party it was Infinity Ward who did it. I think Infinity Ward did it. Doesn't matter who did it, but they think they hired out another developer to port it over. But the fact is they went to the effort, they paid all the money to get it ported over. Why? Because so many people owned it. And I think, they even talked about at one point trying to get Halo on the DS just because so many people had a DS and it was just a way of making more money. And, it must have been an absolute pig to try and get a 360 game running on a Wii, but they did it anyway because that was, there were so many users out there who could potentially buy the game and make them lots of moolah, and that's what the developers are looking for, and especially the publishers. They're all out to try and make money, and if they can do that just by, putting X amount of money in and they think they'll get Y amount of money back, they'll do it. They will. And, if it's a bit of a, tricky thing to port over, they'll just pay someone to do it. They don't mind if it gets done. They can still make money out of it. And with the Wii, that had so many users, it's not surprising they paid someone to do it. I think they did anyway. The point is that if people buy the Switch because they like the Switch and they think that it will have this third-party support, and even the Wii U had third-party support to begin with things like Mass Effect 3 and stuff like that, so it is, the option is there. People may buy into it and third parties will support it to begin with. They take a bit of a gamble, maybe not EA, but that's EA, and they will, they'll have a bit of a go at it. People will then, if they're interested in it, they'll buy it, and third parties will go, okay, this makes us money, let's carry on doing that. And they will, and I don't think when it comes down to it, people who own a Switch, they'll be playing it portably and things like that. They're not going to be worried about, the fact that their main character's hat has, only 80% of the polygons that you can find on the Xbox One version or something like that. People just don't care. If the game functions exactly the same, within reason. I mean, obviously there will be certain features that won't be able to run for one reason or another, and you can look at various ports like Watch Dogs. It had very few NPCs and stuff like that. I don't think people really care. Okay, it may be a slightly inferior version, but I mean, you can argue that Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS is an inferior version of the Wii U version. And yet people play that to death. It's a great game, but it's not as good as the Wii U version. So why would people play it? Because it's portable and it's on a different system and it offers different advantages, regardless of the fact that the graphics aren't nearly as good. But whether or not the Switch is as powerful as the Xbox One or the PS4, and it may well be, we don't know. If it is, that would be, you know, that would be superb. I'm not going to lie, that would be great. But if it's not a death sentence for the system. It never has been in gaming, and it never will be. I mean, a good example, although not maybe the best example, because it's playing on nostalgia, is the NES Mini. You know, people bought that in droves, and, you know, I know it's playing off nostalgia and things like that, so it's not a great example. But, I mean, over here in the UK, it sold out just as much as it did everywhere else, and we don't really have any nostalgia for the NES because it failed massively over here. Although, that may be a bit unfair, but it did not pick up nearly as well as it did in the States. We had far more Sega systems over here. I don't think I even ever saw a NES until I was about, let's be honest, about 15, because they just went around. I saw it in a car boot sale, and I really should have picked it up. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that the games make a system. I mean, you can have the most powerful system in the world, like, you know, sort of the good old-fashioned Neo Geo. That didn't really do all that well. It was an incredible machine, so advanced for its time. But people weren't interested because, I mean, well, it was expensive, which didn't help either. But also, there weren't a huge number of games for it. And it's a bit of a vicious circle in a way, because a system isn't successful, it doesn't get very many games on it, and therefore people don't buy it. Wii U is a classic example. So you need that first initial bang. You need that first initial impact to really carry it through. And a system can still recover if it doesn't have that, but it is so much harder. And I think Nintendo will be very aware of this, because they are Nintendo. They're an enormous gaming company. What do you expect? Nevertheless, spec, good or bad, we'll find out all about it on Friday, I'm sure, even if we just get a vague idea from seeing some actual gameplay or something like that. And I'm going to actually be using the Switch as well, so I'll be able to have a bit of a fiddle and let you know how all that goes. But when it comes down to it, the point I'm trying to make is that spec isn't everything. What is more important is games and support from third parties. And, you know, spec does help when it comes to porting and things like that. But what I think is more important is that the install base is there and the companies know they can make money. And the fact that the Switch is apparently really easy to develop for, according to various different developers like Image and Form, good chaps. Check them out. SteamWorld. Hi, SteamWorld Dig. Lovely stuff. If you're watching, Brian, Brian Julius, if you're watching, hello. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in, but I completely lost it. Those guys have talked very publicly and said that the Switch is an absolute dream to work with. I mean, the Wii U was supposedly an absolute pig. So the Switch is apparently really good and really easy, and that is so much more important than spec in my eyes. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the support of the third parties, and well, we'll see, won't we? We will see. But what do you think? Are you a purist? Do you like 1080p 60 frames a second on any game you could ever run because you've got this massive PC the size of a room that can run Crysis 17 at 19,000 frames a second in 8K? I don't know where I'm going with this. Or do you agree it's not impossible? Sometimes I have vaguely, you know, grounded opinions. Let us know down there in the comments. We'd love to hear what you guys think. Because at the end of the day, what I've said, it's just an opinion. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you have some ridiculous idea about the specs of that subscribe button, and then slap it, and be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.